Jared Kushner once lent Benjamin Netanyahu his bed. That's a juicy takeaway from Jodi Kantor's deep dive into Donald Trump's son-in-law and his relationship with Israel, published in 2017 in the New York Times. One time, Jared gave up his bed and moved to the basement so Netanyahu could spend the night at their home in Livingston, New Jersey. Netanyahu has long been a friend of the Kushners, and particularly Jared's dad, Charles Kushner, a major donor to pro-Israel and Jewish causes. Real estate developer and political contributor Charles Kushner was sentenced in April 2005 to 24 months in prison for his pleas of guilty to assisting in the filing of false tax returns, retaliating against a cooperating witness, and making false statements to the Federal Election Commission, U.S. Attorney Christopher J. Christie announced. Calling Kushner's crime disgraceful and reprehensible, U.S. District Judge Jose L. Linares sentenced Kushner to the maximum term. As a convicted felon, he was also disbarred in 3 states. He later received a pardon issued by his son's father-in-law, President Trump, on December 23, 2020. Kushner has donated significant amounts to Trump's campaigns. Previously, he was a major Democratic Party donor. Charles Kushner is currently French ambassador in Trump's administration. Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, Netanyahu's religious advisor with influence in the White House, told Netanyahu that God had an important role for him in the future, long before he came to prominence in Israel, according to the Israeli website By Faith, on June 15, 2024. The rabbi reportedly told Netanyahu in a private meeting that he would be Israel's last prime minister, and that he would be the one to hand over the scepter to the Messiah. When Netanyahu became the Israeli occupation's prime minister, many felt this confirmed the rabbi's prophecy. When the Rebbe met Netanyahu, he reminded him of his job to do something to hasten the coming of Messiah and to move forward with God's will, according to the Hebrew website. The report revolves around who told Netanyahu to prepare Israel for the Messiah, where will the third temple be built, and what will happen to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Chabad sect, one of the extreme Jewish groups that believes in the concept of the Mashiach and calls for the destruction of Al-Aqsa Mosque to build the temple in its place, also believes Netanyahu is Israeli occupation's last prime minister before power is handed over to the Mashiach. For years, Texas businessman Byron Stinson has dreamed of a world at peace. He thinks he has been chosen by God to help fulfill a biblical and Judaic prophecy, leading to the building of the third temple. Others would argue that this is the biggest provocation for 2 billion Muslims and would lead to an uncontrollable Middle East war. According to the Bible, Numbers 19, the sacred ceremony, in which an unblemished red cow is slaughtered and then burned, must take place on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem with a view of the site of the former temple. Stinson, who detailed the search in his 2024 book, The Hunt for the Red Heifer. That search included advertising in rancher magazines, doing outreach to breeders, and offering a $50,000 reward, which eventually led to 5 perfect red cows being flown to Israel in 2021. The arrival of the 5 heifers in Israel may have played a role in the October 7, 2023 attack that began the Israel-Hamas war. In a speech listing motives for the attack on Israel, one of the leaders of Hamas accused Israelis of bringing 5 cows into the Holy Land, CBS News reported. The Temple Mount is the current site of the Dome of the Rock, part of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, an Islamic sacred site. The Bible mentions that some end times events will occur in a temple in Jerusalem, Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24:50, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, speaking of the Antichrist, tells us, he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Before the end times can occur, a temple must be present for these events to occur in. There is still the small problem of the Islamic Dome of the Rock being on the site where the Jewish temple is supposed to be. Muslims believe this is the place from which Mohammed ascended into heaven, making it the 3rd most sacred of Muslim shrines. For the Jews to take over this place and build a temple upon it would be unthinkable in today's political climate. The sacrifice of the red heifer on Temple Mount would fulfill a prophecy leading to the building of the 3rd temple. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stated in an interview that he saw himself as part of a historic and spiritual mission. and was strongly committed to the concept of a greater Israel. He made these remarks during an interview with I-24 News, as reported by the Times of Israel. The concept of Greater Israel includes territories designated for a future Palestinian state, as well as parts of present-day Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt. During the interview, Sharon Gal gave Netanyahu an amulet in the form of a map of the Promised Land, and asked if the Prime Minister felt a connection to the idea of Greater Israel. Netanyahu replied, "Very much so." Additionally, Netanyahu said that he was fulfilling a mission of generations. A controversial measure grants Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, a staunch supporter of Greater Israel, unprecedented powers to advance controversial settlement expansion in the West Bank. The current Minister of Finance and Minister of Administrative Affairs for the West Bank, Bezalel Smotrich, played a key role in drafting this law. Smotrich, himself a settler, is regarded in Parliament as the strategist behind the success of the Greater Israel movement. A year earlier, in September 2017, when he was already vice president of the Knesset, he published a document entitled The Decisive Plan. In it, he bluntly presents his vision of a state of Israel between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, which would require the annexation of all territories previously occupied by Israel. He argues that there needs to be practical and political awareness that there is room for only one expression of national self-determination west of the Jordan River, that of the Jewish nation. In part 2, is Jared Kushner the Antichrist? And what the fuck is wrong with Alex Karp of Palantir?